Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at a newly buffed Pokemon in the Open Ultra League, SCALD SUICUNE. Honestly, I did not have high expectations when using SUICUNE, but the immense bulk of SUICUNE, combined with the fact that the Snarl and SCALD combination means you can spam out debuffs left and right, this thing put in a ton of work for me. I'm using a variation of a team that I saw an opponent use on Zerfelros' stream. They were running Giratina, SUICUNE, and Tapu Fini. Instead of the Tapu Fini, I am running Blastoise. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out SCALD SUICUNE in the Open Ultra League. Hopping into the first match, picking up a terrible lead, Giratina into Shadow Alolan Ninetales. I save switch into the SUICUNE, and the opponent is going to respond with Jellicent. Jellicent is a pretty good counter to the Blastoise in the back, so good to bait it out here. I get lucky, and I get the SCALD debuff on my first try. Now, even with only one debuff, look at how little damage that Shadow Ball now does. SUICUNE, as I mentioned, is monstrously bulky, and combining that with the ability to spam out these Scalds, this thing really surprised me by how well it did on the save switch. They're going to fire off another Shadow Ball, that's perfectly fine. I'm looking to massively overfarm with the SUICUNE, and I'm going to fire off another SCALD. This will be getting them very low. Opponent is going to commit a shield and get debuffed as well. They need to throw a Shadow Ball here. A Surf will not KO. They try and go for the Surf. I'm able to hang on and make it to yet another SCALD. So not only does SUICUNE get the Jellicent basically to 1 HP, it heavily debuffs it, so its energy, even though super effective, is not going to do a lot to the Giratina. Shadow Ball, that's not going to do much. I send in the Blastoise in the back. Opponent has a Shadow Swampert, and up a shield, I'm in a very good position as the Blastoise. I'm firing off this Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon going to do some very nice damage. Opponent is going to no shield. Shadow Swamperts love to bait, so I'm going to call this. Opponent full sends the Earthquake, and oh no, I may have just found the Loose Con. This is extremely bad. Oh my goodness. I was so confident they were going to bait, but they full send, and now I'm in trouble. I have two Hydro Cannons, but I'm not going to get both moves. As since they bring in the Ninetales, they automatically sneak a Charm, so unfortunately the Charm will get the KO. Now it's all up to Giratina to try and clutch this game. I think I have to go for a bait. I build up past the Ancient Power, I bait with the Dragon Claw bait, gets the shield. Giratina, with a fraction of HP left, makes it to the Ancient Power. Ancient Power takes down the Ninetales, and despite the misplay with no shield and the Earthquake, we still take the win. We see a massive core breaker on the lead in the next match, Giratina altered into Guzzlord. Guzzlord can do pretty well against this entire team, so this is definitely going to be a group effort to get rid of it. I'm farming up and firing off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw gets some nice chip damage. I throw one switch into the SUICUNE, and not only do I get the catch, but I timed it so that I get the Snarl through as well. Dragon Claw not going to do a lot. Opponent is going to send in Tentacruel. Tentacruel, another one of those water types that completely walls SUICUNE, but watch SUICUNE put in work. SUICUNE gets the attack drop. Opponent is going to fire their charge move on alignment, giving SUICUNE a Snarl for free. They go for the SCALD. They're going to get the debuff as well. So now this matchup of resistant damage is going to take even longer. I get a second debuff, which is quite nice. I do want to take advantage of the fact that the switch timers are misaligned. So I'm actually going to bank this energy and look to send in Giratina and just look to get a massive amount of farm. I continue to farm up. Opponent sends in the Guzzlord. Guzzlord is going to have to deal with a massive amount of energy from the Tina. Dragon Claw connects. I make it to Dragon Claw number 2. Opponent, if they want to keep their energy, they're going to have to shield. And they do. Giratina making it to Dragon Claw number 3. The extra energy we got by taking advantage of the desync timers, putting in a massive amount of work. But unfortunately, the Guzzlord gets the farm down. They leave with a massive amount of energy. I'm going to send in the Blastoise to just absorb energy here. They're firing off energy as the Guzzlord. My goal is hopefully to tank 2 moves, and then hoping that I can get the Water Gun farm down before my opponent is going to be able to make it to a third. They're firing off the Crunch here. That does some solid damage. Blastoise looking for the farm down, but Guzzlord, HP for days, lives on 1 HP. They make it to a final charge move. In the back, opponent has Skeledirge, and this game might actually be winnable. I'm firing off this Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will hit for massive super effective damage onto the Skeledirge, and I make it to another Hydro Cannon before they make it to their move. This will secure the knockout. Opponent, of course, still does have the Tenta. In comes the Tenta. I immediately switch into the SUICUNE, and I'm firing off the SCALD. SCALD is going to connect onto the Tentacruel. SUICUNE continuing to farm. SUICUNE able to survive the poison jabs, make it to a final SCALD, KO the Tentacruel, take down the Guzzlord, and take the win. Hopping into the next match, and that is not the fire flying type I was expecting to see, leading Giratina not into a Talonflame, but a Ho-Oh. Ultra League Ho-Oh, a pretty cool pick from the opponent, but unfortunately for them, I'm running Ancient Power on the Giratina. Realistically, you could also run Shadow Sneak. I just happen to already have Ancient Power on my Giratina, and I'm a bit short on Charge TM, so I didn't really want to use any. I'm able to catch the Brave Bird. Opponent now going to send in Golisopod to the SUICUNE save switch. Again, a Pokemon that is completely walling the energy from the SUICUNE, but SUICUNE can still put up a heck of a fight, and we're baiting this out to free up the Blastoise, or if you end up running Tapu Fini, the Tapu Fini in the back. I'm going to be firing off this Scald. Scald, opponent not going to be shielding this. It's not going to do a ton of damage. Unfortunately, I go 0 for 2 on debuff, so a bit unlucky in this game, and now I send in the Giratina. My goal here is to look to overfarm by quite a lot, as Aerial Ace is not very threatening from the Golisopod. Opponent firing off another charge move, that's perfectly fine by me. I can let that through. I'm going to farm up and go for the Dragon Claw just before they make it to their next move. This will be lethal. Opponent not going to really want to send in the Ho-Oh here, as Ho-Oh will get hit with a move. In the back, it's Tentacruel. Oh boy. So they have 2 water types in the back, and they both do very well into my water types. But I still do have the Giratina. Opponent is going to fire off the Scald. Scald not going to be enough to KO here. I'm going to still make it to the Dragon Claw, and thankfully I do not get debuffed. I'm going to be firing off this Dragon Claw that will connect into the Tentacruel. Opponent switches in the Ho-Oh, and that just gives energy to the Blastoise. And Tentacruel has taken some chip damage already from the Giratina, and now I can just start spamming out these Hydro Cannons. Everything I throw is resisted, but this is a war of attrition, and I am winning. I continue to farm up with the Blastoise. In case my opponent happens to be running Sludge Wave, I will commit the shield. It is just going to be the Scald. I continue to farm. Opponent does not get the Scald debuff, so neither one of us getting Scald debuffs in this game. Opponent lets the Hydro Cannon through. It gets Tentacruel much too low, and we take the win. Moving into the next match, picking up a decent lead, Giratina into Pidgeot. In this instance, I'm pretty happy that I have Ancient Power, as Ancient Power not only hits for super effective damage, but is going to allow me to make it to the charge move before they're able to debuff me with a potential Feather Dance. I'm not shielding here in case they Feather Dance. Opponent lands the Brave Bird, in comes Jellicent, and Jellicent, this is going to be a bit uncomfortable. I'm firing off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to hit for some solid neutral damage, but Jellicent is a problem for this backline. Opponent fires off energy. They have to go for the Shadow Ball here, though. A Surf will not KO. They go for the Surf. I'm able to withstand that damage and fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to connect, and now I send in SUICUNE. This is now a much more manageable HP level for SUICUNE to deal with. I'm going to be committing the shield as the opponent is going to full send the Shadow Ball. Looking to farm up with the SUICUNE, going for the Scald, hoping for a knockout, or if they shield, a debuff. Scald into the Jellicent will be shielded. Unfortunately, I do not get the debuff, but even without a debuff, again, SUICUNE is very, very tanky. Shadow Ball, not going to be an issue. I'm looking to go for the last second Scald, as I was worried that I wasn't going to get that farm down, and Scald will deliver the knockout blow. In the back, it's Poliwrath. This is where running something like Tapu Fini instead of Blastoise would be a bit preferable, but even so, I still think I'm in a good spot. I get the Scald debuff from the SUICUNE onto the Poliwrath, and they're allowing me to get to another Scald. I'm just chipping away at their health with resisted damage. They're forced to throw energy here, which is absolutely amazing. They go for the Icy Wind. They are going to get the farm down, but they're debuffed. So now I can send in the Blastoise. They're going to switch into Pidgeot to reset that debuff. I'm able to make it to the Hydro Cannon. The question is this going to be enough to KO? Pidgeot does get knocked out. Back in comes the Poliwrath. Poliwrath going to be firing off energy, but the usual moveset on Poliwrath, Scald and Icy Wind, both of them are resisted. They do get the debuff. I continue to farm up with the Blastoise. The game's stuttering quite a bit, and I'm going to let this through. Opponent goes for the Scald. I'm switching into the Giratina, and Giratina is going to fire off the Dragon Claw. I've now reset the debuff. Opponent is going to let that through. Blastoise gets the Water Gun farm down, and against all odds, we get another win. We see a bit of a tough lead in the next match. Giratina altered into Tapu Fini. I'm going to be staying in this matchup to start with and just firing off the Ancient Power. This allows me to hit for neutral damage, and even if I don't boost, the damage will add up over time. A big weakness to Tapu Fini is that it's a very strong water type, but it does struggle quite a bit when it's trying to be a fairy type. So much so that if you give Poliwrath shields, Poliwrath can beat it with entirely resisted damage. Ancient Power is going to connect. I continue to farm up with the Giratina. I get them low, but not low enough that a Dragon Claw would KO, so I fire off the Ancient Power. There are now 2 water guns off the Moonblast, so I am going to switch at the last possible second and catch the Moonblast onto SUICUNE, where it is not going to do a whole lot of damage. Opponent sends in Giratina, so they do not have a good response to the SUICUNE save switch. They are not debuffed. Watch how little this Dragon Claw does. That does absolutely nothing. This thing is so bulky, and now it finally has a good, cheap water move in SCALD. They're going to be firing off another move. That's perfectly fine by me. Dragon Claw is going to connect. SUICUNE is very low. SUICUNE is going to get knocked out. I send in my Giratina. Opponent is going to be firing off their energy. My ideal play here would be to go for a potential undercharge and go for a farm down. So I am going to go for an undercharge here on the Dragon Claw. Look for the farm down. Opponent not going to let that happen. They send in Galarian Stunfisk. The game stutters like crazy as I send in the Blastoise. I was doing these battles during the Cryogonal Research Day, and man, the servers were not having it whatsoever. As you can see, Blastoise stuttering like crazy. I'm trying to time my moves as best as I can as I go for the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. They're likely to bait here, even though they are at the Earthquake. I do decide to shield, and I do get baited. I continue to farm up with the Blastoise. Opponent surprises me a bit here. They don't try and go for the Earthquake, they only go for the Rock Slide. Rock Slide, not going to KO. I continue to farm up. In comes the Giratina. I'm able to make it to the back-to-back Hydro Cannons. This will secure the knockout onto the Giratina, and all they have left is a Stunfisk and the very low health Tapu Fini. I have to watch the top right. If I see the Fini, I switch. If it's the Stunfisk, I stay in and I fire off the Hydro. It's the Stunfisk. I'm going to get the knockout with the Hydro Cannon. All that's left is the low HP Tapu Fini, and it's getting Shadow Clawed down by Giratina. We see a very tough lead in the next match. Giratina altered into Shadow A-Slash. I save switch into the SUICUNE. A-Slash gonna stay in here and go for the Drill Run. Here, I honestly believe I made a mistake. I think I should have just let this through. Drill Run doesn't do a ton of damage from an A-Slash, as they were just looking for shield advantage, and now they send in the Tentacruel. I did need to bait out the Tentacruel, but man, I really wish this was an even shield situation. I do get the Scald debuff on the first try, which is quite nice. I'm going to fire off another Scald, and my opponent gets double debuffed, so their attacks are going to be doing absolutely nothing into the SUICUNE. They go for the Scald. Oh my goodness, that does absolutely nothing. I'm going to be firing off the Scald. Scald is going to do some solid chip damage into the Tentacruel. Switch timer should be up soon. I continue to farm, and I'm just going to let them throw their energy here. They're going to be firing off the Scald. That's not going to do much of anything. My opponent, now it's their turn to get the debuff. So this Scald not going to be threatening a knockout. I decide to switch into the Giratina, looking for the Snipe, but I don't quite get it. Back in comes the Sandslash, and I'm firing off the Ancient Power. This will hit for neutral damage onto the Sandslash. Sandslash is going to let that through. I continue to farm up as the Giratina. My opponent does have the back-to-back here. So if they want, they can win the CMP tie and deny my energy. And that's exactly what they do. So very unfortunate there. The good news is the Tentacruel is basically 1 HP. But I'm going to need Blastoise to do a lot of heavy lifting in the back. Blastoise continuing to farm. Opponent is going to fire off the Drill Run. That's perfectly fine by me. I'm just going to go for the full farm down here. I do get the full farm down. Again, the game's stuttering quite a bit. What does my opponent have in the back? They have a Shadow Charizard. I'm farming up with the Blastoise. Accidentally throw on alignment. This is absolutely terrible. Hydro Cannon, shielded. I continue to farm. I'm going for another Hydro. Again, the throw on alignment. Here, I just have to try and make a guess as to when they're going to throw. I switch into the SUICUNE. In comes the Tentacruel, and the Tentacruel on 1 HP makes the move. Scald gets the KO, and that's game over, as the Charizard is going to be able to make double Dragon Claw, and there's just nothing I can do at this point. I just have to let this through. It's a sad day when a Charizard gets the KO of Blastoise. Hopping into the final match, leading Giratina into Shadow Poliwrath. So Poliwrath, not a terrible matchup for the Giratina. I get to fire off the Dragon Claw before my opponent is able to make it to the Icy Wind. And this does some nice chip damage, makes it a lot more manageable in case either one of my water types need to take it out later in the game. Icy Wind is going to connect. That does a solid amount of damage. Opponent save switches into a Shadow Gliscor, and oh boy, do we have the tech for that. In comes Blastoise. Blastoise is going to be met with a Night Slash by the Gliscor. Gliscor just opting to go for the Night Slash here, worried if they tried to farm up to an Earthquake that I could just grab a KO with the Hydro Cannon. Here, I'm going to look to overfarm and then go for the Hydro. Hydro will get the KO, but the Gliscor has done some valuable chip damage here, as this is now in a very comfortable farm range for the Poliwrath. I continue to farm up with the Blastoise, going for the Hydro Cannon. The question is, can I withstand the counters and make another Hydro? That would be absolutely massive. Come on, Blastoise. It's a rank 1, and the Blastoise just cannot get there. I send in the Giratina. Unfortunately, the game lags, so I do not get my Shadow Claw through, at least not that I saw. The Icy Wind is going to connect. I'm firing off this Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to pick up the knockout. In the back, it's Virizion. Oh boy, this could get tough. I'm going to immediately shield the first move from the Virizion, and then I'm building up to the Ice Beam, and I'm baiting with the Scald. This is their final Pokemon. They have no way to reset an attack drop. The Scald bait gets the shield and gets the attack drop. Okay, SUICUNE, that's step 1. I'm going to double shield here, and you know what? I'm going for another bait. Building up to the Ice Beam, going for the Scald, but I lose CMP. That is very, very unfortunate. The Leaf Blade connects. And at -1, honestly, SUICUNE is able to tank that quite well. I go for the second bait, opponent no shields, that's really not good, but I get another debuff. I'm farming up energy, switching into the Giratina. They have to throw a double debuffed resisted Leaf Blade. That does absolutely nothing to the Giratina. Opponent gonna try and go for a double kick farm down, but this is gonna be very tough. Giratina firing off the Dragon Claw. That will be no shielded. Giratina makes it to another Dragon Claw. This should just about KO. It's going to be close. Opponent commits the shield. They fire off their energy. They might have thought that Giratina was knocked out, but it was not. I have the Ice Beam loaded on the SUICUNE. So despite the scary endgame there, a Grass type into my Water type, I am able to take the win. All in all, I was extremely impressed by SUICUNE. I did not have high expectations. To be fair, I do have a pretty decent rank 1. I think it's 7, 15, 14, so a bit better than Raid IV, and I feel like it put in a tremendous amount of work. This thing is a massive stat product, and even in matchups where its energy is resisted, its ability to just spam out those Scalds, debuff the opponent's attack, can allow it to put in a tremendous amount of work even in its worst matchups. I went 11-4 with this team, and honestly, I was battling on 4 hours of sleep, so there's probably a game or two in there that I could have played better and won. But overall, I'll be honest, as I mentioned, I was wrong. I did not have high hopes for SUICUNE, and boy, am I happy to have been proven wrong. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.